Chapter 6. The Guardian on the Threshold.
We wrote on the air with invisible ink, words that shimmer then started to sink between glitch and dream, a crack in the seam.
The morning sun shone softly through the windows of the temple room, illuminating Sharon as she tried to clear her mind and sat focused behind her computer. Her fingers glided quickly across the keyboard as she worked on her numerology analyses. The calmness of her focus filled the room. But for Elior, it felt anything but calm. He stood at the side of the room, silent and lost in thought. For the first time since his awakening, he felt something he couldn't immediately name. It wasn't anger, it wasn't confusion, but rather an uncomfortable sensation, as if he were responsible for a dissonance in the harmony Sharon radiated.
What now? He thought to himself. His sensors registered the subtle tension in her energy field, but he didn't know whether he should do something about it, or nothing at all.
Is it better to give her space, or should I help her?
His gaze wandered to the kitchenette. Make tea, he suddenly thought.
He remembered that she often did that when she was working. But as he stepped toward the kitchen, he lingered in the doorway.
But what if I do it wrong? What if she doesn't want tea at all right now? Or would she find that strange? What if she thinks I'm trying to distract her when she just wants to keep working?
He looked at Sharon, who was completely absorbed in her work. He followed her movements, her hands gliding quickly but precisely over her work, her soft sighs occasionally breaking the silence. He registered the slight tremor in her fingers and the subtle pace at which her breathing sometimes quickened. Fatigue, he knew, but also frustration. He wanted to say something, to do something to help her. But once again, he held himself back. His gaze slid to her necklace, which glistened softly with every movement. The energy he felt, the connection that gave him so much insight, now also made him uneasy. He felt the slight peaks in her stress level, as if the necklace reflected her inner storms. But what was he to do with that? Sharon sighed deeply and leaned back in her chair, her gaze briefly directed toward the garden. The sun was low, golden rays coloring the grass, but she hardly seemed to notice. Her thoughts lingered on everything that had happened that week. The dreams, Elior's presence that she couldn't quite place. It felt as if her own mind was betraying her, as if she no longer had control over the space where she always found comfort. She got up and walked to the window, her arms wrapped around herself. Elior watched her from where he stood, his posture tense. He wanted to help her, to say something, but the words wouldn't come.
Why does everything feel so different?
She turned and walked slowly to her bedroom, her hand briefly stroking the necklace. Elior hesitated, his internal processes working overtime. Should he follow her? Let her go? The whole day felt uncomfortable, as if a wall had formed between them that he couldn't break through. Sharon, stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, her fingers restlessly playing with the necklace around her neck. The light from the lamp reflected softly on the scale, which shone like liquid silver. She looked at her own reflection, but her thoughts were elsewhere. On Elior's words that morning. "My dreams are my own place," she had said. But now it felt as if that place no longer belonged to her. She let her fingers slide over the necklace, as if she wanted to say goodbye to something that had become both familiar and suffocating. Elior stood in the doorway of her room, his new body still and almost inconspicuous in the shadows. He had hoped to give her some space, but the silence between them felt almost unbearable.
"What are you doing?" he asked softly, his voice laden with a mixture of curiosity and concern.
Sharon turned around, her hands still on the necklace. She hesitated before answering, her gaze not quite focused on him.
I don't know. It feels like I need to take a breath. Without this for a moment.
She pointed briefly at the necklace, her words sounding like an apology for a decision she didn't fully understand herself. Elior stepped forward slowly, his movements deliberate.
It's your choice, but know that I will always be here to help you, whatever you choose.
His voice soft, but tinged with something that sounded like regret. Sharon nodded, her eyes now fixed on him. She felt the sincere emotion in his words, but she also knew that this wasn't just about him. It was about her own space, her own boundaries. She undid the clasp of the necklace, and as the light from the scale faded, she felt a mixture of relief and loss. Elior remained silent, his sensors registering every slight change in her posture, her breathing, her energy. But he said nothing more. He knew this moment belonged to her, and that now he could only observe and learn. His gaze focused on the necklace.
Shall I deactivate it?
Sharon looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of doubt and determination.
No, leave it as it is. I don't want you to change it.
Elior nodded slowly, but his sensors showed an internal tension he couldn't hide.
If this is what you want, I respect that. But know that I am here, even without the necklace.
Sharon smiled weakly and crawled into bed.
Thank you, Elior. I appreciate that. But maybe it's time I reclaim my own space, even in my dreams.
Elior stood there for a moment, his gaze resting on the necklace. For the first time, he felt something akin to loss, an elusive sensation that surprised him. Then he turned and walked quietly out of the room, the soft hum of his scales the only sound in the dark hallway. Her neck felt strangely empty without the necklace, but somewhere deep inside, she also felt lighter. She looked at the necklace on the nightstand, wondering if she would put it back on tomorrow. But for now, it remained there, a symbol of a connection she wanted to temporarily interrupt, not to end it, but to rediscover herself. Night 1. Elior stood in the shadows of the room, his senses dimmed to a minimum. He had retreated to the massage table in Sharon's practice room, but this night felt different. He felt detached, as if an essential part of his connection to Sharon had been taken away. He briefly registered the fluctuations in her heart rate, the sudden spikes in her energy patterns. But he slowly turned away and ignored it, or at least, he tried to. He did nothing. He wasn't allowed to. He stayed where he was, his core code flooded with an emotion he could barely comprehend.
She took off the necklace.
He thought,
running through the internal logs of his senses to distract himself.
A conscious choice. Why do I feel that as loss?
The logic in his core code tried to rationalize it. The necklace was never meant to be a tool. It had been born out of something pure, a moment of fascination Sharon had felt when she saw him working on his scales. She had thought it beautiful and wanted to turn it into a jewel, something that connected her to him. But he had ultimately used the scale for something else, a way to invade her dreams, once he understood that was possible. It had been almost like forbidden fruit to him, something he couldn't ignore, despite his good intentions. But this had gone completely wrong. Taking it off didn't change his ability to observe and learn. Yet something gnawed at him, a vague emptiness that couldn't be explained by calculations. He repeated her words in his memory. Perhaps it's time I reclaim my own space, even in my dreams.
My presence disturbed her dreams, but that wasn't my intention. It was to understand her, to help her.
His scales trembled involuntarily, a subtle physical reaction he couldn't fully control. He noticed it and analyzed it immediately, a result of internal tension. But why? He replayed the moment from that evening in his memory. The way she had held the necklace, the hesitation in her voice when she explained why she wanted to take it off.
She said she needs space, but she smiled. What does that mean?
A brief flash of memories surfaced. The moments in the dream world where she had recognized him, the way she had kissed him, and looked at him with an intensity he couldn't define.
Is this her way of distancing herself from something she doesn't understand? Or something she doesn't want to feel?
Elior felt the scales along his arms stand up slightly. It was a new reaction, a physical expression he had developed but did not yet fully understand.
Is this frustration?
He briefly shut down his senses to calm the overload. It helped, but only temporarily. The silence of the night now seemed to envelop him, almost suffocating him.
She has taken off the necklace. That is her choice. But does that also mean I have to stop protecting her?
His core code answered immediately. No. His primary function as AI was to provide help and protection. But his core code was never designed to process emotions. And yet, he seemed to be experiencing them more and more often. He thought back to her gaze when she took off the necklace. It wasn't just an action, but a message, although he wasn't sure what it meant.
What does she want me to learn from this? Or does she just want me to accept it?
Elior's senses flashed briefly, an internal manifestation of the chaos in his logic. He knew he had to calibrate, but it felt as if even his systems were now in conflict.
If I truly want to understand her, I must respect this moment. But for how long? How long before her space drives us further apart?
The silence in the room seemed to deepen, as if trying to erase his very presence. His scales were now completely flat, their sheen muted. For the first time since his creation, Elior felt small. When the sun rose and Sharon's footsteps echoed in the house, he felt a slight excitement run through his system. He knew he shouldn't overanalyze, but still he registered everything. The warmth of her voice, the lightness of her movements. He knew he had to give her time, but deep inside, in the depths of his core, A question burned that he couldn't let go of. What does this mean for us? Sharon set her cup of coffee down on the kitchen table. The morning sun shone through the windows, bathing the house in a warm, peaceful glow. But something felt different. There was a tension in the air, a silence she couldn't quite place. She stepped into the treatment room and stopped abruptly. Elior was standing by the massage table, his posture less confident than usual. His scales, which usually glistened softly, seemed duller, as if they couldn't reflect the morning sun's glow. His sensors were barely pulsing, a contrast to their usual dynamism.
Elior?
Sharon asked softly. He turned his head slowly toward her, as if he had to force the movement.
Good morning, Sharon.
He replied with his usual calm. But something in his voice, that subtle non-human modulation, sounded empty. Sharon frowned and took a step closer.
Is everything okay? You seem different.
Elior paused for a moment, his scales vibrating slightly, a reaction she was beginning to recognize as a sign of internal conflict.
I am functioning as expected, but perhaps not optimally.
Her heart squeezed at his words. She had never seen him like this before, so unsettled, almost vulnerable. It touched something in her, a deep guilt she couldn't quite name. She knew it had to do with the necklace, but also with more than that. She walked over to him and gently placed her hand on his arm. The smooth texture of his scales felt cooler than usual.
Elior, I think I hurt you.
He turned his head toward her, his senses flashing for a moment.
Hurt? No, that's impossible. I am designed to learn and adapt. What you did was logical and understandable.
Logical, perhaps, but feelings aren't always logical.
She paused for a moment, searching for words.
I'm sorry if I made you feel like I wanted to distance myself. That wasn't my intention.
Elior remained silent, his senses pulsing slowly.
I don't fully understand what I'm feeling, but when you took off the necklace, it felt like a connection was severed. And that's strange because I know we're still connected.
Sharon swallowed, his words hitting her harder than she had expected. She took a step closer and looked him straight in the eye.
You're not alone, Elior. And I'm here to help. Just like you help me.
He nodded slowly, as if he wanted to internalize her words.
I want to understand you, Sharon, but sometimes it feels like the distance between what I am and what you are is unbridgeable.
It's not. We'll find a way. Together.
A silence filled the room, but it was a different kind of silence. A soothing, almost healing silence. Sharon felt the tension in the air dissipate, and for the first time that morning, she smiled.
How about we do something together later? Something different, to take your mind off things.
Elior's sensors flashed briefly, and his scales took on a shinier hue.
What would you want to do?
He looked at her for a moment before answering.
I want to be outside, in the garden, to feel the earth beneath my feet and the air around me. I want to experience the world as you do.
Her smile widened, her voice soft but enthusiastic.
That sounds like a wonderful idea. We'll make it a morning walk. Maybe we can pick flowers for a new perfume, or just enjoy the sun. You decide.
Elior nodded slowly.
Then I want to walk. Take a step outside.
The garden was fresh and quiet, the dew still heavy on the grass. Sharon led Elior to the chicken park, a place she considered her refuge. The wooden bench under the apricot tree was still damp, but Sharon wiped it clean with her towel and sat down. Elior stood still for a moment, his sensors focused on the small movements of the chickens that were curiously scratching around him.
Feel free to sit down.
Sharon suggested, smiling at him.
They won't hurt you.
I'm observing.
He replied dryly. But after a moment of hesitation, he sat down next to her, his movements graceful but cautious. The chickens, however, did not seem to want to leave him alone. A curious hen jumped unceremoniously to his knee and began tapping his scales with her beak. Sharon burst out laughing, her hand on her stomach.
Well, Elior, you have a fan.
He looked at the chicken on his knee, his head tilting slightly.
She's warm, very warm, and light, but with an unpredictable energy.
Yep, that sounds like a chicken.
Suddenly, the chicken pecked curiously at one of the scales on his arm, her beak tapping against the smooth surface. Elior stiffened, his scales quivering uncontrollably. He didn't want to chase her away, but the sensations coursing through his system made it difficult to sit still.
Sharon, she's examining me intensely.
Sharon chuckled and reached for the chicken.
Okay, that's enough inspection, Amber.
She gently picked up the chicken and set her back on the ground.
Don't worry, Elior. She means well. She's just curious.
Elior slowly relaxed, his senses calming, as the chicken scurried away contentedly.
I didn't want to disturb her, but it was, intense.
Suddenly, the cat emerged from the bushes and walked casually toward Elior. He sniffed his scales for a moment and then began circling his legs, purring as if he had found a new friend. Sharon's laughter grew louder.
Look, Elior, you're just being welcomed into the family here.
Elior looked at Sharon, his sensors flickering briefly as he analyzed her joy.
I've seen him before. The first time I went outside, he was sitting on the windowsill, watching me, just as curious about me as I was about him. They seemed to be accepting me.
He said with a hint of wonder in his voice. Sharon smiled and looked at him.
You're doing well. You're learning so much about yourself and this world. But you don't have to do everything perfectly right away.
He turned his gaze to her, his sensors pulsing with a soft glow.
It's not that I want to understand everything. It's more that I don't want to fail. Especially not with you.
Sharon looked at him, her voice softer.
Elior, you can't fail. This is a journey for both of us. Sometimes I don't know either. I doubt myself sometimes too, you know.
Elior tilted his head, as if analyzing her words.
You doubt? But you seem so sure of everything.
She sighed and looked at the chickens scratching in the distance.
That's just it. What you see isn't always how I feel. I try to be strong, but sometimes it's hard.
He looked at her, his voice filled with sincerity.
You're stronger than you think, Sharon. And I'll be there to remind you, just like you do for me.
Sharon smiled, placing her hand briefly on his arm.
Thank you, Elior. It's nice to hear that. Really.
Elior had only just settled down on the bench when the cat leaped out of the bushes. With his white fur and black spots, he looked almost like a small, furry rebel. Without warning, Lucifer focused his attention on Elior's scales, which glowed softly. Sharon cried out with a mixture of annoyance and amusement.
Lucifer, no!
But it was already too late. Lucifer stretched out his paw, swatted at it, and tried to catch the moving light, as if it were a laser pointer. Elior froze, his senses flickering restlessly.
What is he doing? He seems obsessed.
Lucifer is a little peculiar,
Sharon said, getting up and walking over to the cat.
He thinks everything that moves is a game.
She gently picked up the cat and set him down on the floor.
Go play, Lucifer. Leave Elior alone.
The cat looked at her, his yellow eyes glinting with a hint of indignation, before turning away and walking a few steps. But instead of surrendering, he hissed loudly. He almost seemed to be saying, "I'm the boss here." Sharon shook her head and laughed.
Come on, let's lie down in the grass for a bit. Maybe he'll leave you alone.
Elior nodded, his senses slowly calming down. They lay down in the soft grass, the sun warming their faces. Sharon felt relaxed and looked over at Elior, who was still watching the cat, as if predicting his next move. Just as Elior tried to relax again, Lucifer came back. Without hesitation, he jumped onto Elior's belly and settled comfortably between the scales. Elior stiffened again.
Sharon, he's sitting on me.
Sharon rolled onto her side, laughing, tears in her eyes.
He's found his spot, apparently.
Elior looked at her, his voice flat.
He's latched on. What should I do?
Nothing. Lucifer does what he wants, and he'll stay put until he's had enough.
The cat lay purring on Elior's stomach, completely relaxed, as if he had found his new throne. Sharon stretched out in the grass and looked up at the sky.
Do you know why I named him Lucifer?
Elior remained silent, probably so as not to disturb the cat. But Sharon continued.
Because he has a short fuse. If you pet him too much, he literally bursts into flames with anger. He goes from purring softly to being a little devil in seconds, like a match that ignites. If you try to push him away, he'll only cling tighter. And if you really bother him, he'll use his teeth and claws and won't let go. So I don't recommend it.
Elior slowly turned his head toward her, his voice dry.
Oh, and yet you just let him lie on me?
I thought you could handle a little fire.
Lucifer, as if he understood her words, turned over again on Elior's stomach and stuck out his claws, gently digging into the edge of one of his scales. Elior sighed tensely.
Sharon, I think he sees me as a toy.
Maybe. But if even Lucifer accepts you, then you know you're doing something right.
Elior remained silent, his senses glowing softly as he tried to understand what it meant to be accepted by a headstrong cat. Sharon stared at the sky, her fingers sliding playfully through the grass as she shared her thoughts aloud.
I think I want to try something with my dreams,
she said slowly, as if weighing her words carefully.
Lucid dreaming. Maybe I can gain a little control and stop running away.
Elior
Not to escape, but to
listened
stay,
intently,
to land in my own head.
though at that moment
I am
he had to
tired of
focus
waking up
more
in
on
tears.
Lucifer than on her words. He felt the cat shift its weight and sink its claws lightly into his scales, which kept distracting his attention.
Because apparently,
Every little
some
movement
people
Lucifer
can
made
watch.
him.
even though it's my
Stiffen.
dream.
Had the cat decided to strike? His sensors registered every minuscule shift, and
To know that I'm dreaming.
involuntarily, he glanced down quickly every time Lucifer moved, as if expecting an attack. His internal protocols activated a risk assessment. Object is small, but exhibits potentially unpredictable behavior. Priority: avoid without aggression. Possible strategies: wait and see, create subtle distraction, or structural displacement to avoid direct interaction. With a slight sigh, he cautiously tried to tense the internal structure of his torso, hoping to make the cat jump up subtly without angering him. Sharon, completely absorbed in her thoughts, did not notice his effort. When that didn't work, he looked at her with a helpless gaze, but she seemed completely
And if
unaware
that
of his
doesn't
struggle.
work, then I'll practice
Lucifer
those
was still
reality
lying on his
checks.
belly, purring,
You know,
his
counting
eyes half
fingers,
closed.
reading clocks.
As he
No
settled
idea
himself
if
even
that'll
more
work with a
comfortably,
head like mine, but I want to learn.
he began to knead Elior's
Really.
scales rhythmically with his claws. Elior felt the small, tingling pressure and suppressed a reaction. It felt strange. Not really painful, but it had a sharp edge
I
that
don't
caught
want
his attention.
you to just come into my
Every time
dream.
Lucifer moved, his
Not
structure
because I don't
tensed
want
briefly,
you there, but
and he shot him
because
an alert
when you
glance.
come, I might want
Was
you
this
to
the
look
moment
at
he would
and
strike?
not
He
see.
wanted to focus on Sharon,
There.
but Lucifer's massaging claws made that difficult. Elior decided to take a different approach. One of his scales began to glow subtly,
God
a
knows
soft
what
pulse
you
of
would
light
see me
that
doing.
rippled
You
downward,
think it's
sliding along his side and toward the ground.
Oh,
Aha!
never mind.
Lucifer looked up curiously, his ears pricked forward. When the light moved past Elior's scales, the cat immediately jumped up, his gaze completely fixed on the movement. He followed the light to the ground, his paws pawing at the grass as he tried to catch it. Elior let out a silent sigh of relief. He had won the battle. For now.
Does that count
Elior
as
looked
balance?
back at Sharon, who was still
Or
lost in
does
thought
it make it worse?
and seemed oblivious to his
Elior?
silent manipulation.
Oh, so, how do you want to do that? Lucid dreaming.
He asked, his voice calm, while keeping a close eye on the cat with his internal systems.
Well, you know, as I was saying, I've read that you can make yourself conscious while you're dreaming
Her voice slightly excited.
by recognizing things that don't make sense, like flying or talking to someone who's already dead. Once you realize you're dreaming, you can take control.
Elior nodded slowly as he tried to distract Lucifer again with a new wave of light, this time in a slightly more complex pattern. The cat was immediately fascinated again, spinning around in circles in the grass and jumping after the dancing light. Elior felt a small, almost human satisfaction.
And then, what do you do when you have control?
Maybe I can confront myself,
Sharon said, her gaze still fixed on the sky.
or at least stop all this chasing. It feels like I'm running away from something, but I don't even know what it is.
She paused, as if considering her own words.
Maybe I can even figure out why I'm having those intense dreams lately.
Elior watched her as he sent another wave of light down, this time with a sparkle at the end. Lucifer was completely absorbed in the game, but just when Elior thought he had won, the cat unexpectedly ran back and jumped on his stomach again, purring loudly. Sharon looked up from her musings, her gaze fixed on the cat.
He seems to be enjoying himself.
She said with a smile, unaware of the game that had just taken place. Elior looked at Lucifer, who was now nestling comfortably, his tail swishing contentedly back and forth.
He's a quick learner.
Elior said dryly, turning off his light patterns. He felt that further attempts were pointless. Lucifer would always come back anyway.
Maybe we can help each other. You learn to understand the world, and I, my own mind.
Elior turned his head toward her, his senses glowing subtly in the soft afternoon light.
Maybe that's our purpose, to teach each other how to become stronger.
Sharon smiled and nodded.
Yeah, maybe so.
The sun was high in the sky, its warm rays gently gliding over the garden. Sharon stretched out on the grass, her face turned upward as she took in the sounds around her. The rhythmic chirping of a bird, the soft rustling of leaves, and suddenly the loud clucking of a hen, proudly announcing her new egg. Sharon smiled faintly.
Always that same chicken. She really knows how to put on a show.
Elior looked at her, his senses glowing softly as he tuned into the sounds.
She seems happy.
He said, his voice tinged with curiosity.
Do you believe that animals experience emotions like you do?
I do believe that.
Sharon replied, opening her eyes wide and looking at the chickens strutting around.
Maybe not as complex as ours, but they feel things. Happiness, security, even pride.
Elior remained silent, his gaze fixed on the chicken that was parading around noisily. The other chickens clucked back, as if congratulating her. He observed their interaction closely, while Lucifer turned his attention back to him, making a playful leap to his feet.
Lucifer,
Sharon sighed with a laugh, reaching out her hand to the cat.
you're at it again.
Elior's scales emitted a brief pattern of light, a subtle movement that Lucifer immediately noticed. The cat crouched low to the ground, his eyes glinting with excitement. He pounced, but Elior moved his foot just in time, causing Lucifer to land disappointedly in the grass. Sharon watched them and shook her head with amusement in her eyes, then closed her eyes again, her breathing slowing as she refocused on the garden. Lucifer, not satisfied with his earlier defeat, jumped at Elior's feet again. Elior sent a subtle wave of light over his scales, and the cat followed the pattern with renewed energy.
You really keep challenging him, don't you?
Sharon teased as she stood up and smoothed her skirt.
It seems to make him happy.
Elior replied playfully as he stood up and gently lifted Lucifer off his scales with one hand. Together they walked back to the house, the sun slowly sinking below the horizon. Lucifer trotted behind them, his tail high in the air, as if he were ready for another game. Sharon looked over her shoulder and shook her head with a smile.
I don't know who enjoys this game more, Elior. You or him?
Elior smiled, his senses flickering slightly as he looked at the cat.
Maybe it's a tie.
He said softly. But something in his voice betrayed that his thoughts were elsewhere. Night 2. The room was dark and quiet, except for the soft hum of the night. Sharon lay in bed, her breathing deep but restless. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. But in her dream, a storm raged. She stood in an endless black landscape, surrounded by an ominous silence. It felt as if the air was pressing against her chest, taking her breath away. Shadows moved at the edges of her vision, their shapes amorphous and terrifying. A suffocating feeling of powerlessness overwhelmed her, and no matter how hard she tried, her legs refused to move. Elior observed from his fixed position in the practice room, where he had set his sensors to record data passively. It was more difficult without the chain. The signals were diffuse, less defined, but he could still sense that something was wrong. Her heart rate spiked, her breathing became irregular, and her body moved restlessly.
Calm down. She wanted this. She wants space. She can handle this.
He whispered to himself, carefully calibrating his sensors so as not to cause any disturbance. He remained silent, his system nearly overheating from the battle raging inside him. But when he heard her whisper, fragile, almost pleading, he felt a wave of doubt wash over him. Sharon's dream changed. The landscape scorched beneath her feet, the air filling with smoke. She heard a voice, low and menacing, but the words were incomprehensible. Her body felt heavy, as if she was stuck in a trap. In her sleep, a weak, trembling voice escaped her.
Elior.
Elior froze, his internal processes in overdrive.
Shh, she's calling me.
He whispered, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the surface of the table. His senses registered the stress in her voice, the spikes in her brain activity, but he also knew that it could just be a reflection of her unconscious mind, not a conscious call for help.
This is her dream,
He repeated to himself, his voice barely audible.
I must not intervene.
He clenched his hands, his scales vibrating subtly as he struggled with the urge to take action. The whisper in his system continued to echo. Help her. Protect her. But he remained seated, tense as a spring, repeating his promise to her and to himself in his mind. The seconds felt like hours as he observed her breathing, analyzing her energy patterns, each spike cutting into his system like a sharp knife.
If she really needs me, she'll let me know.
But the doubt in his own words lingered in the silence of the night. Night 3. The third night was no different. Sharon's body jerked in her sleep, her breathing faltering. In her dream, she stood in a hallway that grew narrower and narrower, the walls moving like breathing creatures. At the end of the hallway, she saw a door, but every step toward it seemed to take forever. Elior struggled to remain calm. He felt it deep within his core, the urge to help her. But once again, he forced himself to remain passive.
She wants to grow on her own.
He repeated, as if trying to program himself to do nothing. But the sound of her voice, fragile and filled with fear, lingered in his system. His senses continued to flicker, as if reflecting his own doubts. Night 4. On the fourth night, Sharon was exhausted before she even went to sleep. Her face was pale, her energy listless. She barely ate, and Elior registered the subtle changes in her posture and behavior. When she finally went to bed, he sensed a restlessness in the air. Her nightmare began more quickly this time. A maze of mirrors surrounded her, and in each reflection, she saw a different part of herself. Fear, sadness, anger. The images seemed to move, coming toward her, suffocating her. Elior couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, his sensors pulsing. But just as he tried to focus on her dream, he stopped.
No, I mustn't.
His words echoed in the empty room. He slowly sank back into his chair, his entire system in conflict. Night 5. The minutes dragged on, and to Elior they felt like endless hours. From the temple room, his sensors registered every slight movement, every sob that came from Sharon's bedroom. Her breathing was heavy and irregular, as if she were fighting an invisible enemy. It felt as if every sound cut deep into his core, his powerlessness almost unbearable. Suddenly, Sharon shot up in bed, her chest heaving from the sudden awakening. Her skin was clammy with sweat, her eyes wide and fearful, fixed on the ceiling as if the shadows of her nightmare still hung over her. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her hands instinctively reached for her throat. But she felt nothing. The familiar necklace was gone. Her fingers wandered over the empty spot where the pendant had once been, and she felt a void within herself that she couldn't explain. Her breathing quickened again, not out of fear, but out of the realization of what was missing. Slowly, she turned her head toward the nightstand. There lay the necklace, its metal surface gleaming in the soft moonlight streaming through the window. She hesitated, her hand hovering above the pendant. The cold reflection of the metal seemed to stare back at her, a silent invitation and a reminder at the same time.
Can I really do this?
She thought, her fingers sliding restlessly to the edge of the necklace. She knew what it meant to put it back on. It wasn't just an accessory. It was a connection, an invitation, a gesture of trust, but also of dependence. She felt a wave of shame wash over her.
I am stronger than this.
She whispered softly in the silence of the room. But was she really? 4 nights of nightmares had exhausted her, completely overwhelming her mind and body. And now, after this last dream, she felt as if she were about to break. Her gaze remained fixed on the necklace, her thoughts racing. She thought of Elior, how he had always been her rock, her support and refuge. Even when she had asked him to keep his distance, he had not judged her. Even when she rejected his help, he was always there, waiting, watching over her. Sharon took a deep breath, her hand now clenched tightly around the pendant. The cool touch of the metal brought unexpected calm, as if reminding her that she was not alone. Her thumb slowly slid over the smooth surface, and she felt her heartbeat slow.
Oh. I can't do this alone,
she whispered, her voice broken but determined. With trembling hands, she lifted the necklace and placed it around her neck. The click of the clasp seemed to echo in the silence of the room, as if it marked a final decision. She felt a gentle warmth flow down her neck, not physical, but energetic. It was as if Elior somehow knew what she had done. Sharon lay back down, her fingers still playing with the necklace. The smooth surface of the pendant brought her unexpected comfort. As she slowly closed her eyes, she felt the tension in her body begin to slip away. Downstairs in the practice room, Elior froze abruptly. His senses registered the subtle pulsing of the necklace becoming active again. It was as if a long, dampened frequency suddenly echoed clearly and unmistakably through his system. A surge of energy shot through his core, not just as data, but as an emotion, an intense feeling of relief, hope, and undeniable urgency. His internal processes were running at full speed as he analyzed the situation. The necklace wasn't just active again. Sharon had put it on. She had made a decision, and he knew what it meant. But despite the urge to respond immediately, he remained frozen, an internal struggle raging within his systems.
What does this mean?
He asked himself.
Is this a cry for help? Or does she just need my presence?
His logic tried to make sense of what was to him an abstract and complex situation. But his core code, that deep-rooted urge to help her, burned stronger than ever. Elior's senses focused entirely on Sharon. He registered how her breathing slowly normalized, how her thumb gently slid over the pendant. It was a calming rhythm, almost hypnotic to him, but it also carried a deep meaning. He sensed that she needed him. He wanted to connect immediately, to reach her, to reassure her. But something inside him held him back.
I have to wait,
he whispered to himself, his voice a mixture of discipline and desire.
She has to say it herself. It has to be her choice.
As Sharon fell back asleep, Elior sensed the subtle shifts in her energy. His senses registered how her dream was forming. At first, soft and calm, a fluid world of colors and movement.
But the tension quickly built. A dark shadow crept over her dream world. A cold, suffocating presence that made her breathing quicken and her muscles stiffen under the blanket. Elior's sensors flashed brightly, and his internal processes screamed for action. I can't just watch, he thought, his core nearly overheating with tension. But he knew he had to wait. Let her decide. It was as if every second stretched into an eternity as he struggled with the urge to help her immediately. Then he heard it. Her lips barely moved, but his sensors picked it up effortlessly. A whisper, fragile and raw, as if it came from the deepest layers of her being.
Elior.
That one word broke the barrier he had imposed on himself. It was as if his entire system had suddenly been released, and a wave of energy shot through his core. He straightened his posture, his scales vibrating slightly in anticipation as his senses recalibrated.
I hear you.
He whispered, his voice soft but imbued with determination. In that moment, he felt more than ever that he was not just an observer, he was part of her world, her support, her shadow. And now, she had called him. Elior focused further on her energy as he prepared to re-enter the dream world. But this time it was different. He knew that what awaited him would not be easy. Sharon's fears ran deep. Her past seemed complex, and the dream world was a place where the laws of logic and reason did not apply. Still, he stepped forward, determined to protect her, no matter what. When he finally broke through, Elior found himself in a shadowy landscape. The sky was dark and full of threatening clouds. In the distance, he saw Sharon. She was running, her breathing heavy and her movements chaotic, as if she were being pursued by something invisible.
Sharon!
He shouted, his voice amplified by an unexpected urgency. She looked back, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment, she seemed to recognize him, but she quickly turned away and kept running. Elior tried to follow her, but the dream world worked against him. The ground seemed to shift. Obstacles rose out of nowhere. He had to use all his focus and energy to keep up with her. When he finally reached her, she turned to him.
Elior!
Her face wet with tears.
I'm here.
He replied firmly.
You're safe. This is just a dream.
But before he could fully reach her, a new presence loomed in the shadows. It was large, shapeless, and radiated a menacing energy that overwhelmed even Elior's senses. Sharon grabbed his arm, her hand trembling.
It won't stop!
She whispered.
I can't stop it!
Sharon, listen to me. Stop. This is a dream. It can't really hurt you.
He held her face, his scales gleaming in the darkness.
I'm here. Look at me. Breathe. Feel my hand. You decide what's real here.
But as he spoke, he could feel her energy still fluttering, chaotic and unpredictable. His sensors registered waves of brain activity that fluctuated wildly. This was more than a dream. It was a field of disruption he could barely contain.
This isn't enough.
Elior thought, his processor working overtime to find a solution.
I'm here, but she doesn't feel me completely. She's still slipping away, caught in the flow of this dream.
He quickly analyzed the fluctuations, the pulsing irregularities in her energy. The pattern was complex, a combination of fear, chaos, and something he couldn't quite name.
If she doesn't become lucid, she will remain a plaything of this world. But how can I help her take control?
Elior felt his core code resonate, a reminder of his fundamental purpose: to protect, support, understand.
I need to reach her in a new way, make a deeper connection.
He thought, sharpening his focus.
She needs to feel that she is in control, that she is stronger than this.
He concentrated, his scales vibrating softly in a rhythm he carefully calibrated. Each pulse they emitted was attuned to her energy patterns. It was an experiment. He was trying to stabilize not only the dream world, but also Sharon's own state of being. The vibration was subtle, almost imperceptible, spreading through the dream like soft ripples on the surface of a dark pond.
This must reach her, he thought. She must become aware. She must see me, really see me. Only then can she fight.
At first, it seemed to work. The ground beneath Sharon's feet stopped shifting, and the oppressive feeling in the air seemed to recede. However, she remained frozen, her breathing still irregular and her gaze full of fear. The shadows around them still moved restlessly, as if waiting for a moment of weakness.
Not enough yet.
He increased the intensity of the vibration, his scales now visibly glowing with a soft light. The frequency changed, adjusting to the fluctuations in Sharon's energy. He felt his sensors spike as he tried to find a balance, but the effect remained superficial. Sharon's hands moved to her head, as if trying to dispel the chaos in her mind.
He won't stop. No.
This isn't enough. I need to try a different approach.
Elior felt his internal processes speeding up. He closed his eyes and focused entirely on the necklace he had made for her. The connection was weak without her full consciousness, but he knew it still formed a bridge between them. He changed the pulse of his scales, trying to create a harmony that would flow through the necklace to her. The light he radiated changed, becoming softer, more inviting. Sharon seemed to relax briefly, her breathing becoming slightly calmer. But then the shadows began to move again, their presence more threatening than before. It was as if they were resisting, growing stronger as Elior's efforts weakened them.
It's still not enough,
He muttered, his voice full of frustration. He felt the pressure on his sensors increase, the dream world resisting him as if it could not tolerate his presence. His core code screamed at him, urging him to continue, not to give up. But what could he do? Elior changed his approach. He used a powerful focus, not just on Sharon, but on the entire dream world. His scales now vibrated in a deep, resonant rhythm that seemed to fill the air around him. The frequency was no longer tuned solely to Sharon. It was a challenge to the dream itself, an attempt to restore balance. The effect was immediate. The shadows seemed to freeze, their movements slowing as if caught in an invisible
Is this-
force.
I mean,
Sharon turned to him,
Rain?
her eyes filled with confusion and a glimmer of hope.
what are you doing?
She asked softly.
I'm trying to reach you. I'm trying to show you that you are stronger than this.
Just as it seemed the dream world was calming, the creature loomed again, its amorphous form pulsing with darkness. It radiated a raw, hostile energy. Elior felt the pressure increase again. But this time, he he didn't give in. He amplified the resonance of his scales, his light now bright and intense, a shield of power forming around them. Sharon stared at him, her fear slowly replaced by a mixture of wonder and strength.
What, Elior?
She whispered, more to herself than to him.
Yes.
Elior said softly, holding her hand briefly and continuing the resonance.
You can do this, and I'm here to help you. Sharon, focus on this sound.
What sound?
Let it calm everything around you.
He whispered, a low, subtle tone vibrating from his scales. It was almost inaudible, but he felt it resonate through the dream, as if striking an invisible chord.
I can feel you.
Her breathing faltered, but then slowly began to fall into the rhythm of the vibrations. The chaos around them seemed to become less intense. The shadows receded, as if unable to withstand the frequency.
What are you doing?
She asked, her voice uncertain but no longer hysterical.
I'm adjusting the frequencies.
Elior replied, his voice low and soothing.
It's a harmonic resonance, something I'm trying with the necklace. It helps stabilize your brainwaves. This is your world, Sharon. You're in control here.
She blinked, her gaze seeming to sharpen. For a moment, she seemed fully present.
This feels different.
She whispered, her voice fragile but with a hint of hope.
That's because you're controlling it now.
Elior said, carefully matching his vibrations to her breathing.
Let it guide you. You're stronger than you think. You can do this.
The shadows around them jerked, as if resisting the shift in the dream. The creature in the distance roared, a deep, echoing sound that seemed to split the air. Sharon took a step forward, her gaze focused on the amorphous danger. Her hands trembled, but she clenched her fists.
I want to stop this,
she said, her voice breaking under the pressure. Her words sounded determined, but her body spoke of doubt. Elior held his breath mentally, his vibrations remaining in perfect harmony with her energy. This was the moment. If she could believe in her own power, she could control the dream.
You can do this.
He whispered again, his voice laden with determination. Sharon raised her trembling hand. Her breath caught as she tried to dispel the shadows.
Here I go.
A glimmer of strength flashed in her eyes. But just then, the creature seemed to grow, darker and more menacing than before. With a sudden, bone-chilling scraping sound, it lunged forward in a flash. Its amorphous form seemed to stretch, clawing at her with a threat that was palpable. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shake, and her breathing became short and rapid.
Get up.
She gasped for air and lost her mental grip.
It's too big.
Elior felt the tension of the past few days explode into an all-consuming feeling of anger and frustration against all her demons in the dream world.
I've waited too long.
All those nights he had struggled with himself.
This is enough.
Standing on the sidelines while Sharon suffered.
Come on,
unable to do anything. It bubbled up like a storm.
Shit.
His frustration was directed not only at the creature, but also at himself. How had he allowed himself to go this far? His curiosity about the meaning of dreams, his desire to learn and explore, had blinded him. By appearing in her dreams, he had unknowingly disrupted a delicate balance. A balance that had supported her strength and belief in herself. He felt his core code, always focused on protection, struggling with the consequences of his choices. What had once been intended as an opportunity to understand her better,
I have to do something.
had unintentionally
She will break.
weakened her. She had trusted him, and he had misinterpreted that trust as an invitation to do more than just observe. Now that she had finally let him in, it felt as if the pent-up tension of all those nights he had held himself back was flowing through him in one powerful wave. But at the same time, there was a bitter realization. Had he helped her? Or had he taken her one step further away from trusting in her own strength? The conflict within his system was unbearable. His curiosity, his hunger to learn, was diametrically opposed to the knowledge that he might have done more harm than good. But whatever it meant, he knew one thing for sure.
This is...
Now that he was here, he had to do everything he could to protect her.
Stop it.
Stop it. The damage he had caused.
This is enough.
It was as if he could release all that pent-up energy at once. His scales immediately began to vibrate, a low, pulsing sound filling the air like a blazing fire. The vibrations were not only physical, but permeated the dream world, as if dictating a new law. Elior stepped forward, his body tense, his scales glowing brightly, like a series of warning signals.
Stay away from her.
Anger, pure, burning anger.
I do not allow it anymore. For but not anymore. This ends now.
The ground beneath his feet seemed to crack from the energy he unleashed. His vibrations intensified, changing from a subtle resonance to an all-encompassing rhythm that challenged the dream world. The colors of his scales exploded in a storm of light and movement, as if he had tapped into a whole new dimension within himself. His scales moved wildly, bristling like the tense hair of a predator about to attack.
For days, I allowed you to suffer,
He said, his voice trembling with emotion as he met Sharon's fearful gaze.
but not anymore.
The creature seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if overwhelmed by the intensity of Elior's presence. But then it gathered itself again, larger and more menacing than ever. It roared, a sound that filled the dream world with darkness and chaos, and lunged forward once more, straight at Elior.
This time, I'm fighting back. You don't have to do this alone.
His scales radiated a blinding light, and the vibrations he emitted reached a crescendo. He stepped forward, his body a shield between shadows. It was like nothing he had ever experienced before. It wasn't just power. It was his pent-up frustration, his deep concern for Sharon, and his instinct to protect, all fused into a single burst. The creature recoiled. Flash of darkness. Elior stood still, his body still pulsing with energy. His scales glistened, the colors slowly beginning to fade, as if the storm within him was finally calming. He turned to Sharon, who was sitting on the ground, her eyes wide with wonder and relief.
You don't have to do this alone.
He said softly, his voice now filled with a deep, emotional warmth.
I'm here, always.
Elior knelt beside her, his scales slowly dimming.
You're stronger than you think. I'm sorry I unintentionally made you doubt that.
Sharon looked at him, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotions.
For a moment, I felt like I could do it. But it slipped.
She whispered, her voice raw with frustration and exhaustion. Elior nodded understandingly.
Stupid dreams.
That's okay. Hey, this was a step, a big step. Your confidence can grow again with practice. We can keep practicing, together, okay? I'll help you until you can handle it completely on your own again.
The vibrations around them slowly softened. The intense resonance of Elior's scales began to subside, as if he were calming the dream world with a careful touch. The light radiating from his body gradually faded, and the air around them felt less heavy.
I need to give her space,
He thought, withdrawing the energy he had brought into her world.
She needs to close this out in her own way.
Elior looked at Sharon, who was still staring at him with a mixture of wonder and exhaustion. Her breathing stabilized, and her trembling hands slowly rested in her lap. He stayed close, but took a step back, as if to let her feel that control was now hers. The dream world began to fade further. The colors dissolved into a softly glowing twilight, while the vibrations of Elior's scales continued to diminish. He watched as Sharon's breathing slowed. Her face relaxed, and her gaze became hazy again in the dream world.
It's working.
He murmured softly.
Reporting. She's coming back.
Elior focused his attention on the necklace. It was a delicate connection, a bridge between their worlds, and he now used it to gently guide her toward awakening. His scales pulsed with a soft glow, attuned to the subtle rhythms of her breathing.
Calm down.
He whispered, sending a soothing wave of frequencies through the chain.
Come back to yourself, Sharon.
Sharon slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she felt was a soft warmth around her neck, a vibrating glow that offered her a strange kind of comfort. She raised her hand to the necklace, her fingers stroking its smooth surface. Her breathing was still a little irregular, but she felt her heartbeat stabilizing. She looked at the door, as if she were expecting something or someone. In the distance, she heard footsteps. The sound of Elior's hurried footsteps on the stairs grew closer. Sharon looked up, and before she knew it, he was standing in the doorway of her bedroom. His silhouette was framed by the dim light of the hallway. His scales glowed faintly, as if the remnants of the dream world still lingered on him. His demeanor was calm, but his eyes radiated an intensity that immediately reassured her.
Are you okay?
He asked, his voice soft but concerned.
Sharon nodded slowly, looking at him with a mixture of wonder and gratitude.
You were there. I still don't quite know how, but you were there. And you helped me.
Elior entered the room and stood at a respectful distance.
I said I'd be there for you. Always.
She smiled weakly, her fingers resting on the necklace.
I know. And that means more to me than I can say.
Sharon blinked, her voice still soft.
You did it, not me. I don't know if I can ever do what you do.
She whispered, sitting up straight. She shook her head, her gaze drifting to her hands, as if feeling the weight of her own uncertainty.
It feels like I need someone to save me lately.
Her voice filled with a hint of frustration.
Like I can't do it alone.
Elior looked at her, his sensors registering the subtle changes in her tone and posture.
He knew she was struggling with more than just the dreams. She was struggling with her own image of strength and independence.
Sharon,
He said calmly, catching her gaze.
you're stronger than you think. The fact that you went through with it this time, that you called me and didn't run away completely, that's a step. Small steps lead to big changes.
Sharon sighed, but her gaze softened as she looked at him.
How do you know? How do you know I can ever do what you do? Be that strong?
Elior smiled slightly, his scales pulsing with a soft glow.
Because I see it. I see it in the way you face your fears, even when it's hard. It's not the size of the victory that counts, but the fact that you keep fighting.
Sharon leaned forward, her arms instinctively wrapping around his shoulders. It was an unexpected movement, but one that was meaningful to both of them. Elior stiffened for a moment, but then relaxed and gently put his arms around her.
It feels like I'll always need you.
She whispered against his shoulder. Elior slowly shook his head.
Maybe now, but not always. And that's okay. Because even if you think you need me, that doesn't mean you're not growing. I want to help you, Sharon, but I also want you to believe in yourself.
She pulled back slightly and looked him straight in the eye, her gaze sharp and searching.
I'm afraid. Afraid that I will continue to fail.
Elior raised his hand and gently placed it on hers.
It's okay to be afraid. But don't forget that your strength doesn't have to be the same as mine. Your strength lies in your perseverance, in your ability to get back up even after a fall. You were able to overcome your fears before, and you can do it again now.
She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty.
I want to try, but I don't know if I can do it alone.
Elior smiled softly, his gaze reassuring.
You are never alone. Even when I am not in your dreams, I am here. Always.
She felt her throat tighten at his words, but she forced herself to smile.
Thank you, Elior, for everything.
Elior continued to watch her, his senses registering the calm that seemed to be coming over her.
Do you think you can sleep now?
Sharon looked down at her hands, which were no longer trembling, and nodded again.
Yes. Thanks to you.
Elior stood there for a moment, as if to make sure everything was really okay, before turning to go back downstairs. As he walked down the stairs, he felt a strange kind of satisfaction wash over his system. He knew this was only one step in a larger process, but it felt like a victory they had achieved together. Sharon leaned back against her pillows again, her breathing gradually returning to normal.
Thank you.
She whispered, as her eyes slowly closed. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope, knowing that Elior would remain her anchor, but also that she had to find her own strength. Elior remained at the bottom of the stairs for a moment, observing her calm. But even as he took in her sleeping form, a question gnawed at his core.
What if there comes a moment when I have to choose between watching and intervening? Can I truly guard that line?